Welcome to Or Something Like That,
the podcast where you can talk shit with your besties.
We're your hosts, Sam
and Hollis. Be sure to follow us on social and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.
And if you love us, give us that 5-star review.
One, two, three, four.
All right, welcome back.
We have a very exciting episode.
Yeah, I am excited about this one. It's been something on my mind for a while. I started listening to Monica Lewinsky's new podcast called Reclaiming. Super interesting. You know, it just really got me thinking about her story, the scandal, how things have changed in the last 20 years and how she's now experiencing this like reexamination of, you know, her role in that, the scandal itself, especially like a new lens for a newer generation of women, especially, who she has described it as like being able to re-examine it without the lens of the media in the 90s, which was so toxic. And yeah, it's a really great podcast. It's a really good listen. She's also been doing a lot of promotion for it. So I've been hearing her in interviews and other podcasts I listen to. And yeah, it's just been taking up a lot of mental space in my mind thinking about it, because it's just, looking back on it, it's just so insane what she went through. The fact that she is, you know, really thriving now, living a new life. Obviously, she's been through a lot of therapy and had to do a lot of work. Yeah. But yeah, so I just thought it would be interesting to kind of like go back, talk about, you know, what we remember and how we perceive it now and how different that is from the time. Because, you know, we were young. I was 98.
Was like 12.
Yeah, I was 10. So I definitely remember
lot
of things, because I mean, it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. And I think...
you couldn't escape it.
No. And I think especially at that age too, we were kind of like that like ripe adolescent age where anything salacious and sexual was like so interesting, and you were hearing all of this stuff. And the fact that, you know, the story was so sexualized. It really just, it became so much about the details of the sexual relations and the oral sex and the dress. And it was very hard to ignore for anyone, especially, you know, somebody of that age, and hearing a woman being talked about that way.
Right.
Was, I mean, we were impressionable.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and
we were hearing it, from what I remember the most are tabloids. Right. Late night shows.
Right.
And then hearing adults talk about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's really where all of my information from it came. So, it's, you know, it's not like I was watching the news and hearing all the details. So kind of going back and rereading and listening to her perspective, again, something that wasn't ever listened to, really her perspective and feelings about it, that wasn't given a second thought outside of like the testimony she was forced to give, you know. So it's just been, I mean, not that this is anything new, but she was just treated horribly, demonized. And the thing that really struck me going back is thinking about how many women are victims and casualties of their time and their generation. And I'm really happy for her that she is alive for a reexamination. That things have changed and shifted, and she's, you know, has been offered a chance to, you know, live a life that's
worth living
by that. Totally. You know? I mean, I think she'll always be plagued by it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, I think it is fortunate for her, at least in a small degree, that, you know, we have grown and evolved as a society, and people are willing to relook and change their minds about it. Yeah. And just how many women in history haven't, you know, weren't
given that opportunity. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to say like she should be grateful to be given this opportunity.
No,
I don't mean it like that. I'm glad that like there is a time in her life where people have come around and seen the light and understand that, like, wow, we really fucked this up for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
We treated her horribly.
Absolutely. And I think too, you know, this is really the first time, aside from, like we talked about previously, you know, hearing about it when I was 12 and seeing what I saw, this is the first time I've ever gone back as an adult and really researched it and watched videos, and I watched the documentary she put out in 2002, almost right after it happened. Really, it was the first time she was able to speak publicly about it. And it was really interesting because they set it up as a Q&A. And this was HBO that produced and distributed the documentary, which is interesting because you're not going to find it on HBO.
You texted me. I tried to find it. I couldn't.
No, I was able to find it on this. It's called like Wow Premiere or Wow Plus, some streaming platform I've never heard of that I had to pay $6 to join to watch it. But I really wanted to watch it because I wanted to hear, like you said, you've been listening to the podcast, and I did. I listened to the first episode of her podcast where she talks about it. I listened to her on Call Her Daddy, where she was doing the promoting of the podcast before it launched, and she talked about it. But I really was interested to hear kind of her perspective and what she had to say so close to it when it happened. And it was set up like a Q&A, and she was essentially just sitting on the edge of a stage, and the audience was allowed to ask her whatever questions they wanted.
That's a kind of a wild setup.
Yes.
That must have been scary.
It was. There were a couple, and she said, I may choose not to answer, but this is an open forum, and
that's brave.
Yeah, it was. And there were a couple of, one of the gentlemen said, how does it feel to be America's premier blowjob queen?
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, she came back, she said something to the tune of, well, maybe it's the fact that, she answered it a little bit about how she felt. And then she said, maybe it's the fact that we live in a male dominated society. So perhaps you'd be more suited to answering that question than me.
Nice.
Yeah.
She's also very smart.
She's very witty. She's very smart. She has a great sense of humor.
She does. Yeah.
But I highly recommend the documentary. It was really, really informative. And she really walks through the whole process of everything and how she was feeling and what was happening, in real time. And it was really, really great. And I highly recommend it. But going back and doing this research, there's just so much that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I really didn't know really kind of how it even came about to begin with.
Yeah.
In conjunction with the Paula Jones case. And for those of you who maybe don't know either, I definitely recommend going, especially people our age who heard about it in the media when it was happening, but we were young and we didn't really have a full grasp of everything. Go back and do your research and look at it again. Paula Jones is somebody that worked with Bill Clinton when he was the governor of Arkansas, and she had made sexual assault allegations against him. So there was a case going on, and this had happened before he was the president, but the case came later on. And, it was actually a really important case that kind of set the precedent for presidents not having immunity from civil litigation while they're a sitting president. So it was actually kind of a big, revolutionary case, I think. But, Monica had talked to people about their relationship, and there were all these other allegations as well. And so they had suspicion that he was having relations with her and a couple of other women. And so she signed an affidavit saying that there were no relations. And that's kind of what sparked the whole thing, because then they were able to sort of pin perjury on her and Bill Clinton, which is what caused the impeachment hearing.
Yeah.
Because that was the other thing, too. When I first started going back and researching, and I'd heard her talking about, they had threatened that I was going to go to prison for 27 years. And I'm like, okay, I don't really remember anything that happened. Because I'm like, prison for what? Affairs aren't illegal. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. Because and the whole sting operation, she was in a shopping mall and the FBI swarmed her. The steps leading up to the whole breaking of the scandal, I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't really either. And, I knew a little bit about Linda Tripp and the fact that she had confided in her and all of that. I didn't know about the tapes, really. I mean, so going back and looking at all of that information was really eye-opening.
Yeah.
And I do think Paula Jones is kind of another casualty of this in the sense that her case was actually dismissed, and then she appealed there were several appeals, and because of what had happened with Monica, her attorneys felt like her case could gain some traction from that because he had lied under oath, and so had Monica. And they ended up settling the case out of court for like $850,000. But, that, not that there wasn't some power imbalance and things going on with Monica, but that was definitely less consensual than what was going on with Monica and Bill. And that, it's almost like nobody cares at all about what happened to Paula Jones either. It's just like, okay, moving on. Like,
yeah, 100%. And she definitely is. And I would imagine watching all the things transpire with Monica Lewinsky was really hard.
I'm sure.
And one glaring thing I remember too, to your point, is that, I always remember getting the sense that no one cared that they had sexual relations.
Right.
It was that he lied about it.
Right.
Everyone was, I always got the impression, I remember hearing jokes, especially like, well, yeah, he's the president, he should be getting a blowjob. Yeah. Good for you, guy.
Right.
That's what men do.
Right.
Women are there for their taking. Right. Especially if you're the president. Yeah. They should be so lucky.
Right.
But Monica is a whore.
Oh, absolutely.
and
a stalker.
Fault. Yeah.
And she came to Washington with this preconceived notion that she was going to have sexual relations with the president of the United States. Yeah. Like, you're capable of throwing yourself at the president of the United States, who's surrounded by Secret Service and security. Like, that's even a possibility. Yeah. Like, you're not even going to go to a rock concert and be able to access the rock star that you want to sleep with, let alone the president. That's just such an insane narrative. Yeah. And what I found very interesting, too, about that whole narrative is that this Sidney Blumenthal, who was the assistant to Bill Clinton, at some point during a press conference, or I guess it could have been testimony, I'm not sure, I saw the video, but he said that Bill Clinton told him that Monica had come on to him and demanded sex from him, and that he had turned her down, and that she had then threatened him. He also said that Bill Clinton told him that Monica had told Bill, that she was being called a stalker by her peers, and that she didn't like that term, and thus, essentially, the story was planted by the White House.
Wow.
Okay? And then the other thing that's kind of wild is, and this was another thing that I didn't know either, is this affair or relationship that she had with her former drama teacher, which we have to be careful what we say about this because this is all alleged, and they've both admitted to the affair, but no one has said anything about it being non-consensual or anything like that. But I think we can all kind of understand that when someone is 19 and they're being pursued by an older man who was once their teacher, that there could possibly be some issues there, right?
Sure.
But he came out with this information about this affair 15 minutes before Bill Clinton went to give the State of the Union address.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And one of the women in the audience of this documentary that I watched stood up and was like, hey, I went to Beverly Hills High School. I was also a student of his, and said that she had been a victim of his advances.
Oh, wow. God.
And asked Monica if she felt like what happened with the president was a pattern of behavior taught to her by this teacher that she had had relations with. And, she said she definitely felt like it sort of shaped her idea of like how married men act and like what's appropriate and that kind of thing. She was 19 years old,
right?
And this was likely maybe one of her first real romantic experiences with somebody at 19. Yeah. And I just thought all of that was interesting too, how the White House seems to have kind of planted this narrative about her being a stalker. And then it seems very suspect to me that this story breaks about the teacher 15 minutes before he's giving the State of the Union address. I feel like that very likely was orchestrated as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
And so they're trying to paint this picture of her. And it's this teacher is the one that said Monica told him that she was going to Washington to get her presidential knee pads.
Yeah,
that's where that came from.
I did read that, yeah.
And so you can't help but wonder if this is all orchestrated by White House media and,
Yeah, and I mean, you're completely defenseless.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
How does one girl stand up to a system like that?
To the most powerful system in the world.
Yeah. And that's one thing that really struck me too, is going back and thinking about, what I remembered is she was only 21. She was a girl. And I think I remember her, she looked very mature for her age.
Yeah.
And so in my mind as a kid hearing about this, and not that it would have struck me at the time. You
saw her as a woman.
But I saw her as like a 35-year-old woman having a consensual
relationship. Like someone more in line with our parents' age than our age.
Yeah, and going back and thinking about it and being like, this was... And she was an intern when she started.
Right.
I don't think she was an intern. She was a paid employee when they had the affair, started having the affair. But still, I mean, I think she was moved up probably because she met him when she was an intern and then was moved into a paid position. I'm sure she
and then she was shipped off to the Pentagon when he wanted it to be over.
Right.
And that's when she started divulging all this information to Linda Tripp, who... If you watch the documentary, the way Linda approached her about it, Linda already knew.
Yeah.
Probably from other people that this was going on. And she was on a war path to take down Clinton and, did the tapes really to pitch this book about the Clinton scandals. And she very much manipulated Monica to get that information out of her and then illegally taped her, which is a whole nother hard to understand how that... They just were like, oh, well.
Right. I mean, again, the White House just, I'm sure, can make their own rules, And that's a whole other layer of trauma for her. It's just like she confided in this person who she truly thought was her friend, who was absolutely betrayed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just like the layers of trauma are just so intense.
Yes.
But yeah, going back to my point, like she was only 21 years old. She was manipulated. She was, not that she wasn't an adult, but we all understand
not that she
how
didn't
you're
make
young
choices.
And impressionable. Yeah,
right.
She does take ownership of that.
Yeah.
But also, she's not a public figure. She is just an individual. And I think that's how also we forget in the media, people who are scrutinized in the media, politicians, public figures, it's much different for them, I feel like.
Yeah, they have a playbook. They have teams of people. They know how to navigate these situations.
Is just an individual girl.
Yes.
With no experience.
Almost a child, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So, I mean, I think that was just the most astounding thing to me to think about, really thinking about me as a 21-year-old if I had gone through that. How incredible it is that she is as positive and functional as she is today.
Right.
Considering that all of that happened to her when she was so young.
Yeah, and she talked about that a lot in the documentary about losing her anonymity. How do you
Anonymity?
say? About losing her anonymity. Say it again.
Anonymity.
Yeah. About losing her anonymity and how difficult that was and how that's, and they asked too, did you ever think about Hillary and what you were, doing to their family? And she said, well, if I'm being completely honest, when I was in it, I never expected her to find out, and she's like, but of course, like later on down the road, yes, she's like, but I also don't understand why nobody's asking Bill what he thought about my family just because she's like, I'm not the one that was married. Yeah. She's like, and I don't want to put all the blame on him, but I certainly don't think I should have the brunt of it. And she shouldn't. I mean, not that she wasn't doing something wrong as well, but
she also wasn't the president of the United States.
Exactly.
Come on. And I mean, that's just, tale as old as time. That's just how things always were and always have been. Women are always scrutinized much more harshly, especially for sexual things.
Yeah.
And it's
absolutely.
Just, you'd think that in a heightened situation such as this, as the most powerful politician, leader of the country, that wouldn't be the case. That this would be the one moment where he was scrutinized more harshly.
Right.
But of course not.
No.
He's powerful.
No. And you also have to look at this too from the standpoint of there were real emotions involved there too. I mean, she truly had feelings for him and thought that they were mutual to an extent. And she says at one point in the documentary where she's talking about the sting operation at the shopping mall and being taken up to the hotel room with the 2 FBI agents and Linda. And she's like, you know, I was 24 years old at the time. I didn't understand. She goes, I never thought for a second, even after signing that affidavit, she's like, and I don't really know why. She's like, I guess I knew that what I was signing wasn't necessarily true. She's like, but I never thought for a minute when all of this was going on that there would be legal implications.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and
She probably didn't know what she was signing, really.
right. So when she's being taken up to the room, she's like, the only thing I really have to go off of is like what you see in movies and on TV. She's like, so I said, I want to call a lawyer because I didn't know what else to say. That's what you see. She's like, that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And so they told her that, okay, you can call a lawyer, but if you do that, we're not going to be able to give you as much information and you're not going to be able to help yourself as much. And she said she started to feel guilty about what would happen to her family, like if everything became public. And she said she was still thinking in this moment that if she just went with them and didn't call a lawyer, that she could at least get some information. And she says, and I could warn the president. And as she's saying this, she breaks down into tears and she goes, so stupid.
Oh my God. That's
she
so
still was trying to warn him, thinking
Yeah, she probably thought that it was reciprocal, that he cared about her too.
That he would do the same for her, which
obviously not.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is heartbreaking.
And then she still was thinking, at a certain point, they finally let her call her mom, and they were waiting for her mom to get there. And so they're like walking around the mall, and she asks to go to the bathroom. She tries to call from a payphone in the bathroom to warn him. And then she's thinking, she sees this mother with her child, and she's like, oh, maybe I could, because whoever she was trying to call didn't answer. And then she was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing it. Maybe I need to find somebody else to do it. And it's just all these things that are going through her mind as a 24-year-old girl who is likely in love with this man and thinks it's mutual and thinks that she can still somehow like save the day.
Right.
I mean, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you like how young and naive she was.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mean that in a, you know, an accusatory way, but just like in a sweet way. Like, this.
So naive.
Yeah.
Just, absolutely. And, you know, just also the fallout from all of this. She was talking about how when she got out of grad school 8 years later, after all of this, she still couldn't get a job. They wouldn't, some places wouldn't even let her interview. And then other places that were more open to like speaking to her were concerned about Hillary receiving the nomination in 2008 and how that would look. And then other people were concerned about the fact that, well, you're going to have to interact with the media. And I mean, she was unhireable. Yeah. And this was in 2007, 2008, almost 10 years later.
Oh yeah. I mean, the repercussions weren't just
long
emotional.
lasting.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, when something like that happens to you when you're that young and to that degree, it's the rest of your life is going to be she's colored by this.
She's arguably the most notable scandal figure of all time.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
she's also said her name is used in 125 songs.
Yeah.
In a sexually explicit way.
Right.
You know? And imagine that, like all the little things. There's the big T traumas, and then there's like the little microaggressions that happen all the time. Like you are listening to music on the radio and you hear your name in conjunction with a blowjob.
Yes.
And you know, and it's gonna be there forever.
Yeah.
And just you can't get away from it. And it's like, even Beyonce had a song with her name in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm a huge Beyonce fan, but
I know.
You know, and it's just like it's just inescapable.
It's so far reaching.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you mentioning her name, and this is just kind of to a point that I made earlier about how the whole thing became so much about the sex and the blowjob and the dress. You know, Ken Starr's report that finally was made public. I can't remember how long it was, but the word sex or sexual was used like over 500 times. Monica Lewinsky's name came up 3,000 times in it. Wow. And Whitewater, which is what they were initially investigating. And then the Paula Jones stuff happened, but it was some legal land dealings that they were investigating. That's what the initial independent counsel investigation was about. Whitewater, twice in the report.
Yeah. Insane. The whole point of all this is just like completely moot, you know?
Right.
And it's taken on a mind of its own. And I feel like there's like 3 or 4 main themes for me in this, and the media is one of them. Mm-hmm. You know, like just how susceptible we are to sensationalism as humans, mm-hmm. to shame, mm-hmm. to public shaming especially. Yeah. I mean, it makes you question everything you read and hear. I mean, I watched this documentary she produced in 2021 called 15 Minutes of Shame.
I saw that. Yeah, I didn't watch it, but I saw it pop up.
It's a really good watch. I mean, because she's really involved in bullying and public shaming.
Yes, that's her big platform now, which I love. Yeah.
And I mean, so her story was featured in that a lot, and then a lot of recent cases of cancel culture gone wrong, kind of. Yeah. Where people were called out and canceled wrongly. Right. But and get no recourse. Yeah. Like it's just, these people lost their jobs. Yeah. But it wasn't quite to the degree that Monica Lewinsky.
Right. I don't know that there's a degree. I can't think of a more extreme case of just being obliterated by the media. And what else is so interesting about this case is that it really came right at the cusp of the internet and news outlets having websites and comment sections. I mean, that was all very new, and had really
Google had just launched that year, I'm pretty sure.
I think, and I may be, if I'm spreading misinformation, I apologize. I believe I saw that the news broke on the internet on the Drudge Report. Do you remember the Drudge Report?
No.
For anybody who's listening to this who might be like Gen Z and you don't know what I'm talking about, just like Google it. You're going to laugh at like how rudimentary it is. It reminds me of, when you look at it online, it reminds me of, remember when we used to have to get data from a computer like before the internet, and it would print on that paper that had the perforations on each side, and you had to tear them off, and it printed, and it like, they're all connected. Yeah. That's almost like what it looks like on the screen. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to go back and like look at all of that, and that's what internet reporting was in those days. But he was pretty conservative. The things that were being said were not nice, obviously. And yeah, I mean, so she was really kind of like the guinea pig of online trolling.
Yeah. And I mean, look where we're at.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the main takeaway from her documentary, is that, public shaming has been a thing that's existed forever. Right. As humans, there is just something in our brain that we get satisfaction from that. But with, the onset of the internet, just how inflamed it can become. Yeah. And how much easier it is. And
we have so many tools for it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And how you can do it from the privacy of your own home, and how much easier it is to do when you
and you can do it with, I can't say this word, but you can do it with
anonymity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And they interviewed a couple of neuroscientists that were just like, there is science to prove that
you get a dopamine hit from it.
Well, there's that, but if you can't put a face to a person, then there's not the same connection. Right. Like we do, and that's the point of the anonymity in the computer, why we see it so often, is because it's much easier to chastise people when we don't have their body language, seeing their face move, hearing their voice, to make a connection with them and humanize them. Right. They aren't people. They're just this.
And neither are you when you're making the comment. Yeah. So it's almost like a double-edged sword, because before, when you were talking about somebody publicly, it was somebody with a camera in your face being like, what do you think about this? And you were on the nightly news talking about it, and there was some recognition, and there was your face out there. And now there's no face on either side of it. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. So it is. I mean, it's crazy to see how things have evolved from that, and how they haven't really, although we've progressed so much in the last 10 years with Me Too, I mean, obviously it's a push and pull. We take a couple steps forward and then a few steps back. Yeah. That's just how progress works. But with the media, it's just been full throttle. Yeah. I mean, we haven't really we haven't really seen much.
We haven't made a lot of progress there. No. And I thought this was interesting too, kind of at the very like beginning of the Me Too movement. She did a first person essay with Vanity Fair in 2014. And that came out, and you saw this big like resurgence of the original audience saying things like, go away, you've had your 15 minutes, we don't want to hear from you. And then you had sort of the younger generation, our generation and Gen Z, coming out and saying, wait a minute, wait, what? No, we do want to hear from you. And no, there was some shit going down here. And that's where sort of the conversation really started about power imbalance and power dynamics inside of a relationship. And
which I mean is a very, not that it hasn't existed, but
we weren't talking about it then.
Conceptualization of it is brand new, it feels like.
Yeah.
You know, considering that as a factor in a lot of these relationships, feels like it, especially men, sorry to call you out like this, are just now coming around to the fact that like that is a factor that you have to consider.
Yes.
When a 19-year-old is having a relationship with the 50-year-old, that like you aren't, even if you're not doing it intentionally, you are exercising a power dynamic on her.
Yes. And there's a fine line between, there's a fine line where it crosses over into abuse of power. Yeah. And you really have to be careful. And, you know, it's very, you know, we say this all the time, it's very nuanced. The complexities are complexing. But one situation where it is not nuanced is when you are the most powerful man in the world and this is a 21-year-old intern. Yeah. There's no gray area there. Yeah. It's manipulation, it's abuse of power, and that's it.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, it would be, I haven't watched that interview where he, you know, after the Me Too movement talked.
Yes.
But
let me find that.
Tell us about that.
Okay. So
it would be so nice to hear him say that, you know, at some point, to come to that realization and speak it into existence. But
okay. So in a 2018 interview, they asked Bill, with the momentum of the Me Too movement, does he feel differently about it? And does he feel like he owes her an apology?
Yeah. And, are you sorry?
Yeah.
For what happened?
Yeah. And he essentially said that he wouldn't have done anything differently. And that was a big disappointment to hear that. And he said that he has apologized to her publicly, but he basically doubled down that he did nothing wrong.
He wouldn't do anything differently with the affair or how he handled it afterwards.
Either.
I shouldn't call it an affair, the relationship.
Yeah, I mean,
affair is kind of a coded word, but that's
and
here's a shame.
I just want to read this review too that I found just so disgusting so this was a review of the 2002 documentary, so it's still pretty fresh, right? And this is all her perspective. Like I said, it was a Q&A. People asked her questions. She told her story in her own words. And this is one of the reviews. Sat through portions of this film on 2 occasions. I couldn't watch it all in one sitting because Monica Lewinsky is exceedingly annoying and now has even become boring by repeating the details of her flirtations and sexual encounters with former President Clinton. She has a singular point of view, that she is a victim. But the victim of what? In this dismal little documentary, she laughingly admitted that she was so young and stupid, but seems to have gained no insight whatsoever as to the seriousness of the situation that in part her behavior caused. Somehow she still believes that she was equal to the President of the USA. I'm sorry, what? I found that weird 4 years ago and still do, but Monica doesn't, and that's why her continual recounting of this story from her perspective is really no longer interesting. I say, Monica, and this part's funny, tell it to the hand. Remember? Because the face ain't listening. Remember in the 90s when we used to say that?
Talk to the hand, not tell it to the hand. Get it right, maybe,
at least get it right. But,
well, I'm assuming this is a woman. Do you know?
I don't. There wasn't a picture for the review, so I don't know.
I mean, I'm just using context clues. I guess it is. Another point she made on the Call Her Daddy podcast that she received the harshest criticism from women. Right. Men made jokes. Women eviscerated her, I think is how she put it.
That's how she put it, yep.
Which is, I mean, also just right in line with how things go, you know?
Yeah. And I also this is really neither here nor there, but I found it kind of interesting and like pathetic is that he gifted Monica the book Leaves of Grass, which is like romantic. I guess is it Walt Whitman? I can't remember
sure.
but anyway, he also gifted the same book to Hillary while they were dating.
Ew, gross.
Yeah.
Just classic men buffoonery.
Oh, right. And, also I want to mention, and again, I don't know how careful we have to be talking about this. These are all allegations, but he is no stranger to allegations.
Yeah, no, that was another thing I didn't know when I found out in our research.
And I do remember Trump talking about it a little bit when he was running against Hillary to kind of try and side rail her campaign. And I just kind of was like, whatever, didn't read that much into it. And I will admit, I really love Hillary Clinton. I'm not afraid to say I voted for her when she ran. I've always really respected her. I think as a woman my age, she was really kind of the first female politician to really like make waves and like go out there. And for me as a young girl, seeing her and being like, we can do this. Like she was kind of that first person for me. Like, am I going to cry? God, sorry.
No.
And I've always really respected her. And we don't know what's true. Trump was making all these accusations about, Bill had these accusations against him and Hillary helped him cover it up. And nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors between a couple. She has chosen to stay with him and stand by him. And she talked a little bit in her promoting her book, I think it was, about how her standing behind him and defending him during the Monica Lewinsky stuff was very separate from how she felt in their marriage, and that was really hard work that they had to do kind of behind the scenes, and that the affair didn't really have anything to do with her defense of him. It was more she didn't feel like the impeachment process was fair in that regard, which, I mean, he did, it was perjury. So I'm not really sure where that stance comes from. So, I mean, kind of, some of that is kind of neither here nor there. But I will say there are a lot of allegations against him. Kathleen Wiley is somebody who came out against him. And I believe she was subpoenaed as well in the Paula Jones case, saying that she had gone to his office to see him about her husband, who was having some legal and financial troubles, and she wanted to try and get him a job. And she, I believe, had worked with him when he was the governor in Arkansas as well. I may be getting some of these details wrong, but she said that he essentially embraced her, kissed her, and tried to fondle both her breasts and genitals. And at the time, she said she was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe his reckless behavior, and she didn't see how any good was going to come of her saying anything about it, so she didn't. But then, I can't remember if she was subpoenaed in the Paula Jones case or if somehow it came out where she ended up making a statement to the independent counsel about it and saying, yeah, this happened. And there's also an actual rape allegation from the 70s. This Juanita Broderick, who's saying that he forcibly had sex with her in a hotel room. And that's the one that Trump really dug his claws into and said that Hillary helped try to cover it up and this and that. And I don't know how much truth there is to that. I will say I watched a video of Juanita talking about it. And I want to say this was back in the 90s because she had brought it to light in the 90s at some point, maybe kind of when all of this stuff was kind of going on and it just sort of got swept under the rug. And then, Trump brought it back up to the surface. But watching her talk about it in this video and how specific she was about how he had bitten her lip kind of. And when he got up, she's like, he got up, he straightened himself, he walked over to the door, casually put on his sunglasses, turned around and said, you're going to want to put some ice on that, and walked out of the hotel room. And it was just the way she's talking about it. And, she breaks down in tears and everything. And it's like,
she's not lying.
It's really hard for me to think that this woman is just lying about this. Like, yeah. I don't know, and
she's not. I'm sorry.
She's probably not. I know.
I just feel like, we've talked about the believe women before.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to things like this, why would she
What
lie?
does she have to gain? I know.
And we've just been proven time and time again that these women aren't lying.
I know.
We just don't want to believe that someone could do something like that.
I know.
It's a hard truth. But
I know.
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah.
I know. And, you know, another thing that really got me thinking about when, like, looking into all of this is I almost wonder how much different it would be today if that happened. Because I hate to say this.
Monica or Juanita?
Monica.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that feels like, in terms of who's going to be demonized in the media and how that's all going to play out, that it wouldn't be much different.
Yeah, I know. I would hope to think it would be more split, because I don't think at the time it felt like there wasn't a single person on her side in defense of her.
Right.
I would like to think that now, at least,
women
have evolved, in that she would have a crew
of women, yeah,
who would come to her defense. I mean, there will always be at least
yeah.
a 50%
yeah. I know.
side of people,
because we internalize that stuff too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's what she was saying when women eviscerate. I mean, that I like to think we've made progress in that regard, but I think the patriarchy is strong in women, and that we are trained to see other women as competition. Yeah. And when we see them doing things we've been told that we can't, we get angry. Yeah. And that anger manifests
in that way. Absolutely. And I will say, though, I 100% agree with that. I will say, though, I was surprised in that black and white documentary in 2002. There were quite a few women in that audience there supporting her.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
and
nice
it was really nice to see. Of course, there were the trolly men too. Yeah. But
like, take a seat, brother. God,
yes.
What are we even doing here?
Why are you even here? Yeah.
Yeah, I know, that's a tough one. I would love to think that it would at least be split now, as opposed to just
right. And then the other thing it got me thinking about too is I'm also so curious about how it would play out in reverse if it was a female president and a younger male intern. Because I would really like to know which is the larger advantage in terms of, like, public opinion. And I mean, is it having the power, or is it being the man?
I think it's being the man.
I think it's being the man too. And I wouldn't be surprised if the roles were reversed, if the female president was made out to be a predator.
Oh, 100%. That's what would happen.
I know.
If it was Hillary, she became president.
Oh my God.
I mean, Hillary's a specific case.
Yes.
She was demonized already for so many cases. But yeah, I mean, any woman, I feel like,
I know,
would
Isn't that so fucked up though? It's so messed up. And I also wonder, and this is another thing that I had to look up, which I found interesting. I was like, because, they did talk a lot about, Hillary was demonized for staying with him through all of this. And it made me wonder then too, like, what public opinion would be and how they would view the husband of the female president. And then, you know what I had to Google? I was like, what is he even called?
Oh, the first man.
That's what I said. I was like, is it first man?
No, what is the term?
It's first gentleman.
First gentleman, yeah.
But I had to Google it.
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't even know. And quite frankly, we haven't even fully settled on it. Like, it's not.
Is there contenders?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really interesting thought. I
think the woman president would be fully demonized as a predator, and it would be the absolute reverse.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah,
to think about.
It is really sad to think that this whole scandal is all based on gender roles.
And I don't mean that. I don't mean that she shouldn't be. But what I mean.
No, I know what you mean.
I just mean that, like, the fact that, and I remember too. This is something I remember being talked about a lot when it was happening when I was 12. Is that so many people were talking about how good of a president he was, and, like, it didn't matter, like, this doesn't affect him being a good president, and he's been so great for the country, and yada yada and all this stuff. And it's just like, I just don't remember a single word being uttered about the mistake that he made,
right,
and that he did wrong, and that he has responsibility and accountability in this.
Yeah, and the double standard and the hypocrisy is so glaring.
Yeah,
and it's true. I think a lot of people for a man will overlook sexual indiscretions and abuse
if he's good at his job,
or really anything. I mean,
or if he's good looking.
Yeah, the excuses they come up with to forgive these horrible, heinous things they do.
I know.
It's insane.
And Bill Clinton was both of those.
Granted the same privilege.
No, absolutely not. And Bill Clinton was both of those. You know, I think most people would say that, at least most people of the Democratic Party, I think, would say that he was good at his job. And there's a lot of people out there that say that he was good looking and charismatic. And that plays into it as well.
And we see it now. I mean, how many politicians? I mean, Trump's a prime example.
Yeah.
He's been grabbing women by the pussy and was nominated president. It doesn't fucking matter how you treat women is what the message is getting sent.
Absolutely.
That men can treat women however they want.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's essentially, those were Trump's words.
Right. And Trump didn't have any redeemable qualities.
No.
No, it is. It's so hard to be a woman.
No redeemable qualities is the best way to put it, for sure.
No redeemable qualities, yes. No, but it gets to the point as a woman where you are constantly bombarded with these overt and subtle messages that it doesn't matter how people treat you. That men can treat you however you want. And it's really hard not to boil it down to that.
I know.
You know, and I think a lot of men are quick to say, oh, you're making a big deal about it. But it's like, it's impossible not to feel that way.
It is. Absolutely it is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what you're constantly being told and seeing. And
like, well, if you mattered more, if women mattered more, then there would be some recourse.
Yeah.
There would be some consequences. But you don't. So
exactly.
Go ahead and do whatever you want.
I know.
And that hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. And that's what's so wild. And yeah, I honestly do find it hard to believe that if the same thing happened today, that there would be that it would go any differently.
Yeah, I think maybe the court of public opinion would be a little bit.
But
I don't think there would be any consequences. I don't think that would change at all. I think we would see it play out in the court of law and in the political atmosphere. And I mean,
you can take the legal stuff out of it. You know, let's say there was nothing else going on and the president just got caught having an affair. I mean, you know, the second people find out and are running with it, and I don't see it going much differently. I don't.
Yeah.
And like you said, to your point about having a little more female support online, yes, I think so too. But I don't think that it's enough yet to really change the trajectory of what would happen for that woman.
Yeah. I'd like to think that maybe she wouldn't have been ran through the dirt for as long and as intensely as she was in the media. But I don't see it.
Yeah, like maybe the late night people wouldn't be joking about it.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there would be some of that. Like we're a little bit better about, you know.
Yeah.
People are afraid of being canceled. Nobody was afraid of being canceled in 1998, you know?
Yeah.
So people are afraid of that now. So that there's a little bit of that gives people pause, I think, in terms at least of what they say publicly and that kind of thing. But in terms of the true court of public opinion, I don't know that it would be much different.
I think a lot of people would immediately blame the woman.
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
Scenario. I think that unfortunately hasn't changed enough.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we could, oh my God, speaking of late night hosts, that could be a whole conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
your boy Conan was making jokes about it.
Yeah. I mean, everybody did.
I know.
And I mean, all the pop stars, the poor pop stars, God. Brittany,
know.
You watch those clips and it's beyond cringe. It's like, oh God, I can't believe we all just watched it and laughed and like.
I know.
But anyways, digressing. Well, yeah, I think I pretty much made all my points. Yeah, I'm just so researching this, listening to her talk. It's given me a little bit of peace to feel like, oh, listening to her kind of thriving again.
Yes.
And, you know, finding some kind of happiness and success.
And
it makes
purpose.
Really
finding a purpose with her anti-bullying and anti-cyberbullying platform. And, you know, she made a really good point when she was talking about, I think it was maybe on Call Her Daddy, or maybe it was the Barbara Walters. interview she did. I can't remember. But anyway, she was talking about her, online cyberbullying platform. And she just made this really great point about how previously, before the internet, these sort of like bullying situations or, trolling type situations had parameters. And that was maybe the playground, or it was just like the people at your school, or it was sleepaway camp or whatever it was. And it kind of started and stopped inside of those parameters. And now with the internet, we have no parameters.
Right.
And I just thought that was a really interesting point. I hadn't heard anybody articulate it that way before. And so,
that was Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
I remember that part.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool that she has found sort of this purpose and, taking her situation and hopefully like helping the future generation navigate some of these situations.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's remarkable that
she's survived this, honestly.
Yeah, that she survived and that she's so pleasant. I mean, she has every reason to be a miserable, hateful person, and she's not.
And she's not, yeah.
She's actually really lovely, and I love listening to her talk. She's, seems like someone you would want to go to lunch with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also has a lot of insight and lived experience that, she can make a really positive impact with.
Yeah.
And I think it feels weird to say I'm happy for her because of
I get it.
Everything that happened, but I'm glad that she is having a moment of reclaiming and getting her life back.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about this before too, just with our own trauma. And I think I said this in our trauma episode, like, I'm not somebody who says things happen for a reason, because there's just like things are nonsensical sometimes. And I think there's a lot of nonsense in what happened to her, but when you can take something from your trauma and turn it into something positive and good, which she's doing, it is really gratifying. And it does sort of help you see through to the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I think she's reached the other side.
Yeah.
And so, I think, I'm happy for her too. I think, she's the best she could be.
Yeah.
Given everything that she's been through.
Yeah. And it's been such a good reminder too, like, to just have some empathy and compassion for human beings, and not to take everything you read and see, especially on social media, at face value.
Or even any media, honestly.
Oh, yeah, any media, but especially social media, because it's so glossy,
right,
and sensationalized or hateful. I feel like it's like the two ends of the spectrum, usually, how it's presented.
It's like they say in reality TV about the reality TV stars, like the producers and all the people are like, don't believe the bad stuff. Don't believe the good stuff either.
Yeah.
Just know who you are, and honestly, just don't read any of it.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get swept up, and I have to constantly remind myself too that, like, we don't know all the details ever,
right,
in a story, and
although we know a lot of them with this one.
Yeah. And shaming corporations, shaming big companies, cancel culture in that regard, I feel like, is a positive thing.
It can be, for sure,
cancel culture for individuals feels risky,
aggressive,
and dangerous, and goes south quickly in most cases. So it was just a nice reminder too, to like have a little compassion for individuals.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you can gather our big takeaways, and definitely recommend her podcast, recommend that documentary I watched was great. I'll try and put in the description the streaming platform I was able to find it on. And if you're somebody our age and you haven't gone back and just kind of filtered through, do it, because it was really interesting, and there's a lot you don't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to do grapes and gripes?
Yeah, let's grapes and gripes. Yeah. Okay, so my grape is a simple one. It's summer now. The weather's getting nicer. We're grilling more. And my grape is just going to the homemade burger. There's just nothing better.
Yeah. I just had a grilled burger at my parents' house last weekend.
There's just nothing better. And I make them on the grill, and they're delicious. I also make them in the cast iron in the house, like a kind of like a flat top situation, like a smash burger. Either, and they're just fantastic. And I'm sorry, but you could be a Michelin star burger chef, and like they're just No restaurant burger is ever better than one you make at home.
Yeah,
it's just
true.
not.
Especially when you have to pay $40 for it.
Yeah.
At a restaurant. It's like, get off it, guys.
Yeah.
I could make
It
this
better
at
be
home.
Wagyu.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Wagyu? I think either one's acceptable.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's true. Makes me
Want a
makes me
burger?
want a burger.
I know, right? And then my gripe is also kind of a simple one. It's going to, being as flexible as I am with kind of being a stay-at-home mom and self-employed and all of that, I get really irritated when I go to the gas station at like 1:47 on a Tuesday and I have to wait in line. I'm like, what are all these people doing here right now? Doesn't anybody work?
Don't you have a job?
What are they doing?
Bums?
Like, I don't get it. It makes
Yeah.
me so mad.
That is, I would feel the same way probably. Like,
I did this on purpose. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, well, if I did, then maybe all these other people
Yeah.
did too. But
I
still,
mean, a
I'm
lot
like,
of people work from home these days.
yeah, get out of here, though. I mean, honestly.
This is my store.
That's right.
Oh, that's funny. My grape and gripe are pretty simple too. My grape goes out to PTO.
Oh, lovely.
Having a
Yes.
job with adequate and plenty of PTO that I am encouraged to take
is necessary.
is so great. I have never experienced a job like that before.
Mm.
And it just, man, you really need it. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it. Everyone.
That is
I
one of the
wish-
perks of a big company.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
wish that everyone, because I've had jobs where you had PTO, but it was like frowned upon if you took it.
Or you had
Or it
like
meant-
9 days.
Right.
Yeah.
And those were also your sick days. So,
yes. My first job, I think we had like 9 days.
yeah,
And it was
which-
if you were sick or
right,
wanted
a
to go on
year, like,
vacation.
what?
And I'm like, excuse me, what?
Yeah, like I don't know what parents do.
No.
If you,
I
mean,
know.
I don't know what they do.
I don't either. I was talking to my cousin about it, and he has older kids than I do. And he was like, yeah, he's like, the 2-hour delays are the real bummer. Because,
yeah, and they're so willy-nilly with them
I know.
now.
It's like, oh, it's foggy.
Yeah,
2-hour delay.
I know.
And I mean, I get it. The buses need to be safe.
Right.
And I understand that. But it's like, it really causes an issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would imagine. A lot of people. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then my gripe goes out to, like, I'm an Aldi stan. I shop there every week.
Just went there.
But somebody needs to be cleaning off the scanners in the self-scan. Those things
are they gross?
nasty. They're always covered in so much shit. And I'm like, did no one... It feels like days worth of buildup when you go in there, and I'm like, did anybody clean these off before?
Well,
like,
can we get a little it's worked into your discount of your groceries.
Probably. They're saving. That's where they're not buying Clorox wipes, so
Right.
that's where your savings comes from. But yeah, can we just get one of the guys to just like a little whippity wipe in the middle of the day?
Right.
Maybe once over.
We get a little wipe action over here.
Yeah, it's gross.
Just a dusting.
Don't want to put my. Like, I have to set it down to weigh it. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, God, I don't even want to put it on here.
All right.
Other
Well.
than that, love you, Aldi's. Keep doing the Lord's work. But.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
That's it for us.
Bye.
Bye.